When my son looked me dead in the eye and said, "Dad, you're getting nothing from Mom's $24 million estate," I stayed calm. His wife smirked like she'd already won the lottery. What they didn't know was that one letter in that will would flip their entire world upside down. Justice has a funny way of showing up. You won't believe what happened next. Stay with me till the end. I never thought I'd be standing in that oak-paneled conference room, the kind that smelled faintly of old leather and money, waiting for a lawyer to read out the details of my ex-wife's will. The irony wasn't lost on me. After all, Denise and I had been divorced for nearly 15 years. She'd moved on with her life, remarried briefly, and then poured herself into her real estate empire. By the time she passed, her estate was valued at over $24 million. I was there because, believe it or not, Denise and I had remained strangely connected. Not romantically, God no, but through our kids. We had two, my son, Ethan, and my daughter, Kayla. I raised them to believe family mattered more than anything, even when Denise and I couldn't keep our marriage afloat. Ethan had taken Denise's side in the divorce, though. He was only 16 back then, but the resentment stuck. Now he was 31, married to a woman named Lacey who had the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. Kayla, on the other hand, had stayed closer to me. She lived 2 states away, working as a nurse, but she called me every week just to check in. When I walked into that room, Ethan was already seated next to Lacey. She crossed her legs, designer heels tapping impatiently against the hardwood. Ethan didn't even look up from his phone. "Didn't think you'd actually show," he muttered without looking at me. I took the chair opposite them. Of course I'd show. Denise and I may not have been married anymore, but she was the mother of my children. Lacey smirked, like I'd just said something naive. I caught the glance she threw Ethan, the kind couples share when they think they've already won. The lawyer, a gray-haired man named Mr. Whitmore, shuffled papers. "We'll begin in a moment. Once Kayla joins us." That's when I felt it, tension, like a rubber band stretched to snapping. Ethan finally lifted his head, his jaw tight. "Dad, I don't know why you're here. Mom made it clear years ago you'd get nothing. You signed the divorce papers. You waived rights to everything. This," he gestured toward the stack of documents, "is for family." Family. The word landed like a punch. Before I could reply, Lacey leaned forward, her tone syrupy sweet. "Ethan's right. Denise worked hard for her money. She wanted it to stay with people who truly mattered. You can't just show up and expect." She let her smirk finish the sentence for her. I clenched my hands beneath the table, forcing myself to breathe. This wasn't about greed for me. I had a mortgage, sure, and I was still working at 64, trying to stretch my 401k to last. But this wasn't about dollars, it was about dignity. About not letting my own son erase me like I was some footnote in his story. And that's when Kayla walked in, her presence a quiet storm that shifted the air. The reading of the will should have been a respectful process, but with my ex-wife's attorney present and my son practically drooling over the potential fortune, it turned into a circus. We gathered in a sleek downtown law office in Dallas. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, but my eyes weren't on the view. They were fixed on the way my son, Ryan, sat leaned back in his chair like he already owned the place. Next to him, his wife Melissa wore that smug little smile of hers, the one that made my stomach churn. The lawyer, Mr. Fletcher, shuffled his papers. According to Mrs. Harper's last will and testament, dated 8 months before her passing, he cleared his throat. Her estate is valued at approximately $24 million. Ryan's head snapped up like someone had handed him a championship trophy. Melissa squeezed his hand under the table, her nails digging into his sleeve. I stayed quiet. Money had never been the reason I was here. Truth be told, I wasn't expecting much. Maybe a token acknowledgement, something to show that despite the divorce and the years of cold silence, my ex-wife still recognized the decades we built together before everything fell apart. But the words that came out next cut deeper than I ever expected. To her son, Ryan Harper, she leaves the primary residence, liquid assets in the amount of $11 million, and a controlling stake in Harper Logistics. Ryan smirked, practically bouncing in his seat. Melissa tilted her head at me, her lips curling like she'd just won a prize at the county fair. To her daughter, Ashley Harper, Mr. Fletcher continued, she leaves $4 million in investment accounts, as well as the lake house property. Ashley, my daughter, blinked in surprise. I knew she hadn't expected much either. She looked at me with wide eyes, a mix of gratitude and guilt. And finally, Fletcher paused, adjusting his glasses, to her ex-husband, Michael Harper. Ryan snorted before the lawyer could even finish. Yeah, right, like he's getting anything. Melissa whispered something under her breath, but loud enough for me to catch it. Deadweight doesn't get paid. I clenched my jaw. Fletcher continued, unfazed. To her ex-husband, Michael Harper, she leaves nothing. The room went silent except for the buzzing of the air conditioner. Nothing. Not a watch, not a letter, not even a dollar bill. It was as if the 30 years I'd spent by her side had been erased. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I forced myself to sit still. Ryan leaned forward, his grin widening. Guess you should have treated her better, huh, Dad? Guess you'll have to stick to your little pension check. Melissa laughed softly, crossing her legs. Don't worry, Michael. Maybe Ashley can buy you lunch sometime. Ashley shot her a glare. That's not funny, Melissa. But Ryan was already puffed up, like he had finally beaten me in some invisible competition. I'd always provided for him, given him opportunities, covered his tuition, even bailed him out when his gambling habit nearly cost him his first house. Yet here he was, relishing in my humiliation. I wanted to snap back, to remind him of every sacrifice I'd made, but I bit my tongue. Anger would only feed his ego. Instead, I swallowed hard and said quietly, "It's not about the money." Melissa scoffed. That's exactly what broke people say. Fletcher wrapped up the session quickly, handing Ryan a thick envelope with documents to sign. Ashley avoided my gaze, but I could tell she was furious, not at me, but at the cruelty of it all. When we walked out into the parking garage, Ryan couldn't resist one last jab. Face it, Dad. You're irrelevant. Mom knew it, and now the whole world knows it. You're getting nothing. Absolutely nothing. Melissa tugged on his arm, smirking. Let's not waste time. We have a mansion to decorate. They strutted toward their black Escalade, the sound of Melissa's heels echoing against the concrete like nails on a chalkboard. Ashley lingered behind, touching my arm. Dad, I'm so sorry. This isn't right. I managed a weak smile. It's fine, Ash. Don't worry about me. But inside, I was burning. It wasn't about the millions, not really. It was about respect. About dignity. About 30 years of my life being reduced to nothing. And as Ryan's laughter echoed through the garage, one thing became clear: this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The words my son had spit at me, "You're getting nothing, Dad," echoed like poison in my ears. The image of Natalie's smug smirk kept replaying too, like she was already rehearsing the victory lap of a lifetime. But as angry as I was, something inside me clicked. I wasn't going to roll over. Not this time. So instead of driving home, I turned toward downtown and pulled into the office of an old friend, my attorney, Brian McCarthy. We'd gone to college together, and while I had become a construction supervisor and later a small business owner, Brian had built himself a reputation as one of the sharpest probate lawyers in the state. The receptionist barely had time to offer me water before Brian strode out, his tie loosened, his expression puzzled. "Mike? What the hell brings you here?" I didn't waste time. "Brian, it's Laura's will. Her estate is worth $24 million. My son's telling me I get nothing. He and Natalie are acting like it's already theirs." Brian's brows shot up. "Your ex-wife? Didn't you two divorce like, 15 years ago?" "Closer to 20. But we never fully severed financial ties. She kept me listed on certain trusts. And Brian, she named me executor in her last draft of the will. At least, I thought she did." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "That's a game changer. If you're executor, they can't cut you out without a fight. When's the reading?" "Next week." Brian smirked. "Then we've got time to prepare. Mike, you may not realize it, but if Laura didn't update her documents correctly, half of what she owned could default back to you through survivorship clauses or marital property rules. It doesn't matter that you're divorced. There are loopholes." I blinked. "Wait, you're saying, legally, I might not just be entitled to something. I might actually hold leverage over the entire estate." "Exactly," Brian said. And if your son and his wife think they can steamroll you, they're in for a rude awakening. For the first time in days, a flicker of hope surged through me. I wasn't powerless. Maybe Laura had left things messy. She always was a mix of brilliance and chaos when it came to money. But messy meant opportunity. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept remembering the look in Natalie's eyes, like she had already erased me from the family ledger. And I thought about Jason, my son. He'd once been this wide-eyed kid who used to beg me to play catch after dinner. When did he decide I was disposable? The next morning, I gathered every document I had, old mortgage papers, our divorce decree, even a folder of retirement account statements. Brian combed through them like a detective. By noon, he pointed at one particular trust agreement from 2007. Here. This clause. Unless it was formally revoked, you're still a 40% beneficiary of this real estate holding company Laura set up. That's worth, conservatively, $8 million. I stared at him, stunned. $8 million. Brian nodded. And that's not even touching the investment accounts. Mike, this isn't over. In fact, I'd say you hold more cards than your son realizes. A strange calm washed over me. For the first time, the balance of power tilted, not fully, but enough to give me breathing room. Jason and Natalie thought I'd show up at the will reading empty-handed, broken, begging. Instead, I'd be walking in armed with knowledge. But here's the kicker, the light twist I hadn't seen coming. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for dignity. For the right to stand tall in front of my son and his smug wife and show them I wasn't some washed-up old man waiting for scraps. Brian clapped me on the shoulder. Get ready, Mike. This is just the beginning. And trust me, courtrooms love underdogs who know the rules. I'll admit, by that point, sitting in that mahogany-floored law office with my son glaring at me like I was a trespasser in his kingdom, I felt cornered. My ex-wife's millions, her legacy, had been the battleground I never wanted. And now my son, the boy I raised, was telling me to my face that I'd get nothing. Not a dime. Not even recognition. But here's the thing about being underestimated. You start remembering all the things people thought you'd forgotten. I leaned back in that leather chair, watching him puff out his chest. His wife, Madison, crossed her legs like she was front row at some Broadway performance. They thought the curtain was about to fall on me. But the truth? The show was just getting started. Funny thing, I said quietly, about wills. My son scoffed. Dad, don't embarrass yourself. The estate lawyer already went through everything. Mom left me the primary beneficiary. Madison and I will handle the rest. You'll be fine. That last line, you'll be fine, was a dagger. Patronizing. Condescending. The same way you talk to an old man you don't respect anymore. I stayed calm. Because the storm wasn't in this room. The storm was in the past. Back when Melissa and I divorced 20 years ago, things got ugly. She came from old money. Her father was one of those oil and gas magnates from Texas, with more land deeds than he had friends. When she filed for divorce, her lawyers tried to bulldoze me. They assumed I'd cave. And honestly, I almost did. I was working a modest government job, my 401k was barely scraping six figures, and we still had a mortgage on the house. But here's what no one realized. Melissa wasn't just leaving me. She was trying to rewrite history. See, when her father passed away, the inheritance wasn't just hers, it was ours. Texas is a community property state. Every dollar that came in while we were married was legally split down the middle. And Melissa, sharp as she was, had overlooked something. There was a trust. A family trust from her father, valued then at maybe $5 million. Hidden inside it was an investment portfolio in my name. Not hers. Mine. Why? Because back in the 90s, her father had a grudge against her. He thought she was reckless with money, too obsessed with appearances. So to spite her, he'd quietly listed me as a beneficiary on one of the accounts, an account tied to a series of energy partnerships. I'll never forget sitting across from the divorce lawyer when he realized it. His eyes darted to the file, then back to me. He muttered, "Well, that changes things." Melissa had been furious. She swore up and down it was a clerical mistake. Tried to drag it out in court, filed motions, even demanded forensic accounting. But the judge ruled clean and clear, the account was legally mine. Back then, I didn't brag. Didn't wave it in her face. I let her believe she'd won the war because she kept the mansion, the cars, the vacation properties. But quietly, I had a nest egg nobody could touch. Over the years, I diversified. A little real estate, a few tech stocks, and yes, I sat on that oil partnership like a dragon on gold. By 2020, that clerical mistake had grown into a portfolio worth north of $18 million. So here's the kicker: Melissa's estate wasn't my lifeline. My lifeline was sitting quietly in my own accounts, protected by contracts my son didn't even know existed. And I wasn't done. See, during those bitter divorce years, I also made a choice. One my son never forgave me for. He was a teenager then, angry, hormonal, loyal to his mother because she was the parent who bought him cars and paid for prep school. He saw me as the villain. And maybe I was, in his eyes. But while he cut me out emotionally, my daughter, sweet Emily, stood by me. She was younger, only 10 when the divorce finalized, but she never stopped coming over on weekends. She sat with me when I made late-night budget spreadsheets. She helped paint the walls of my tiny apartment after I downsized. She knew I wasn't perfect, but she also knew I never stopped fighting. What my son doesn't realize, and what Madison has no clue about, is that when Emily turned 18, I quietly added her as a co-trustee on one of those investment accounts. She wasn't just my daughter, she was my partner in this long game. So sitting there in the lawyer's office, watching my son sneer, I had to bite my tongue not to laugh. He thought I was begging for scraps. He thought Madison's smug little smirk was the end of my story. But the past has a funny way of coming back around. "Dad," he said, pushing the paperwork toward me, "sign the release forms. It just makes things easier for everyone. Mom wanted me to take care of her estate. You'll get an allowance if you need help." Allowance. From my own son. I stared at the pen, then back at him. And for the first time in decades, I felt that old fire in my gut. The same fire that got me through the divorce, that built me back up when everyone thought I'd collapse. Because the truth was, Melissa's will wasn't the crown jewel. My crown jewel was the hidden empire she never managed to strip from me. And the only person who knew, Emily. And in a few weeks, when the trust documents surfaced, the entire balance of power would flip upside down. I smiled. Not the kind of smile that begs for peace. The kind that knows a storm is coming. "Son," I said, sliding the pen back, "you have no idea what you're asking me to sign away. And you have no idea what's coming." For the first time, I saw the smirk fade just a little from Madison's lips. Because the past I carried? It wasn't dead weight. It was dynamite. I'll never forget the look on Jake's face when the probate judge called for a recess after slamming his gavel. My son, my own flesh and blood, looked like someone had pulled the rug from under him. For years, he'd acted untouchable, smug, confident that his mother's estate was his golden ticket. But for the first time, I saw real panic in his eyes. I leaned back in my chair, crossed my arms, and let the silence sit heavy. He avoided my gaze, his knee bouncing up and down under the table. Beside him, Amanda, my daughter-in-law, whispered sharply in his ear, clearly upset. She was the type who thought she had the whole world figured out, always smirking like she was the smartest person in the room. But the way her face drained of color told me she finally realized things weren't going their way. When the court recessed, I stepped into the hallway. That's when Amanda stormed up to me, eyes narrowed. "You think this little stunt is going to change anything?" she hissed. "That money was promised to Jake. You've got no claim here." I raised an eyebrow. Promised? By who? Because last I checked, promises don't hold up in probate court. Only documents do. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She turned back toward Jake, whispering furiously. I had to admit, part of me wanted to explode, to let years of resentment pour out. But I kept my cool. My lawyer, Mr. Harlan, nudged me to step aside. "Don't engage them too much," he muttered. "They're scared. Let's keep it that way." That's when Jake finally approached, shoulders stiff. "Dad," he started, his voice uneven, "we don't need to drag this out. Why don't we sit down, the three of us, and work something out quietly?" I laughed, actually laughed out loud. "Oh, now you want to work something out? After you both told me I'd get nothing? After Amanda sat there smirking like the cat that ate the canary?" Jake's jaw clenched. "You're just trying to punish me." "Punish you?" No, Jake, I said, lowering my voice so only he could hear. This isn't punishment. This is consequence. There's a difference. He flinched, but he didn't reply. When court reconvened, things shifted hard. My attorney presented a sealed letter, handwritten by my ex-wife Claire, dated just weeks before her passing. It was notarized, signed, and tucked away in her personal safety deposit box. I watched Jake's shoulders stiffen as the judge read Claire's words aloud. To my former husband Daniel, we didn't part ways kindly, but no one knows better than me how much you sacrificed to raise Jake when I couldn't. I don't want him to think he can erase you, or erase what you did for him, just because he's grown. I want you to have control of the lake house and a share of the estate to ensure you're taken care of. It's what's fair. The courtroom went dead silent. My heart hammered in my chest. She'd actually acknowledged me. After everything. Jake shot up from his chair, red-faced. That letter doesn't mean anything. She probably wrote that when she wasn't in her right mind. But the judge wasn't having it. Mr. Walker, this letter was notarized and filed. Unless you can prove she was incapacitated at the time, it's valid. Amanda buried her face in her hands. Jake sputtered, but she promised me. The judge's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. Promises are not law. Sit down. That's when I realized the tide had finally turned. For the first time since this whole mess started, I had the leverage. My lawyer leaned toward me, whispering, "They know they're cornered. We can negotiate a settlement from strength now. Or push for full enforcement. Your call." I thought about it. Did I want to drag Jake through the mud? Did I want to completely strip him of everything, just to teach him a lesson? A part of me, the angry, betrayed father, said yes. But another part whispered, this was my chance to set the record straight, not just take revenge. When recess came again, Jake didn't look so tough anymore. He slumped in a chair outside the courtroom like a little boy who'd just been caught stealing. I sat beside him. You wanted me to get nothing, Jake. You made that clear. But your mother didn't agree. She saw what you refused to see. His voice cracked. She always said she'd leave everything to me. I built my life around that. We took out the mortgage on our house thinking he stopped himself, realizing he'd said too much. There it was. The hidden pressure point. Amanda's eyes darted toward him like she wanted to slap the words back into his mouth. You leveraged your inheritance? I asked slowly, letting the weight of the question sink in. Jake, did you gamble away your future before you even had it? He didn't answer, but the silence was enough. I stood, shaking my head. That's not my burden to carry. But don't you dare try to make it mine. And for once, Jake had nothing to say. When we walked back into the courtroom, the shift in power was undeniable. Jake and Amanda looked like they were shrinking, while I, finally, after years of being treated like an afterthought, stood taller. The judge called the case back to order, and I swear I felt a quiet firelight inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about finally breaking free of the weight Jake and Amanda had tried to pin on me. For the first time in years, I wasn't on defense. I was in control. And that was the moment everything changed. When the judge's gavel finally struck, it felt like thunder rolling across the courtroom. Final, absolute, undeniable. Based on the evidence presented, the court recognizes Michael Reynolds as a beneficiary of the late Linda Reynolds estate, as outlined in her original 2019 will. Any attempt to block or invalidate this will is hereby rejected. I swear, I almost collapsed right there on the bench. Not because I was surprised. I knew Linda had left that will untouched. She wasn't a woman who made decisions lightly. But after weeks of court hearings, depositions, cross-examinations, and watching my own son and daughter-in-law smirk like they'd already won the lottery, hearing the judge say those words was like finally exhaling after holding my breath underwater too long. Derek's face dropped. He looked like someone had just yanked the rug out from under him. Tiffany, my daughter-in-law, the self-appointed queen of the Reynolds fortune, shifted uncomfortably, her little victory smirk finally wiped clean. She grabbed his arm like she was holding onto a sinking ship. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I just sat there, steady, almost calm. Justice doesn't need shouting, it speaks for itself. After court, I stepped outside into the brisk December air. Reporters were waiting. After all, $24 million inheritance battle, makes for a juicy headline in Chicago. I didn't say much to them, just, all I ever wanted was for Linda's wishes to be honored. That's what today was about. Because here's the truth, it was never just about money. Don't get me wrong, $24 million is life-changing, but it was about respect. About not letting greed rewrite history. Later that week, I met with my attorney, Ms. Harris. She slid the finalized estate papers across her desk. "You'll receive $8 million outright," she said. "The rest will be split between Derek and your daughter, plus a charitable trust Linda set up. It's airtight now." I nodded, feeling that strange mix of relief and bittersweet grief. Linda was gone, and no court ruling could change that. But she had trusted me enough to leave me in her will, and I wasn't going to let anyone erase that. That evening, Derek called. For the first time in months, his voice didn't have that sharp, entitled edge. "Dad. I didn't think it would go like this." "No," I said quietly, "you didn't. You thought money would matter more than family." He went silent. Tiffany muttered something in the background, probably urging him to hang up. But he didn't. "I messed up," he finally admitted. I wanted to yell at him, to tell him how much it hurt to be treated like a stranger, like a nuisance standing between him and a pile of cash. But instead, I took a breath. "You're my son. Nothing changes that. But you need to think hard about the kind of man you want to be, because right now, money owns you. And it's ugly, Derek. Real ugly." He didn't argue. He just said, "I'll think about it," and hung up. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But maybe it was the first crack in his armor. With my share, I did what felt right. I paid off my mortgage, secured my retirement, and then donated a big portion to Linda's favorite causes, a scholarship fund for single mothers and a community art center. That felt like real wealth, honoring her legacy in ways money-hungry hands could never understand. And here's the kicker, the charitable trust Linda created came with a clause. Derek and Tiffany had to serve on the board if they wanted access to their share of the estate. Meaning they couldn't just sit back and cash checks. They actually had to work, give speeches, show up at events. The look on Tiffany's face when she found out? Priceless. Now, every time I walk past the community art center, where Linda's name is engraved on the front stone, I feel proud. Proud that I stood up, proud that I didn't cave, proud that I protected what she wanted. Money can twist people. It can break families, expose greed, and burn bridges. But it can also build legacies, create opportunity, and heal wounds, if you use it the right way. So when people ask me what I learned from this whole nightmare, I tell them this: stand your ground. Honor your truth. And don't ever let anyone, family or not, bully you out of what's rightfully yours. Because in the end, justice isn't about winning money. It's about reclaiming dignity. And I walked away with both. When the dust settled, I realized something important. Revenge wasn't the point, it was reclaiming my dignity. For so long, I thought being the quiet one, the good family member, meant swallowing every insult, letting people like Brad and even my ex dictate my worth. But the truth is, silence doesn't protect you, it only feeds the people who want to step on you. Standing up for myself didn't just change how others saw me, it changed how I saw me. For the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and felt proud. I wasn't just a pushover sister, or the woman with a messy divorce. I was someone who could say, enough, and actually mean it. In American culture, we talk a lot about independence. 401ks, mortgages, making your own way. But independence isn't just about finances. It's about emotional independence too. You can't let someone else's validation, or lack of it, be the measure of your value. If your family only accepts you when you're quiet, obedient, or useful to them, that's not family. That's control dressed up as tradition. The hardest part wasn't confronting Brad in that courtroom, or even standing up to my ex. It was accepting that I couldn't save relationships that didn't want to be saved. And that's okay. Sometimes walking away is the only way to walk toward peace. I think back to Christmas night, when Brad called me no longer family. That used to sting. But now? It feels like freedom. If family is supposed to love, support, and protect, then Brad disqualified himself the second he chose greed over loyalty. And here's the real lesson: you don't owe anyone your silence, not even people with your last name. Blood makes you related. Respect makes you family. So if you're watching this and you've been made to feel small, disposable, or less than by the people who should have lifted you up, hear me loud and clear. You are allowed to take your power back. You are allowed to choose peace over chaos, respect over obligation, and self-worth over toxic loyalty. Because at the end of the day, family isn't who shares your DNA. Family is who shows up when you need them. And as for Brad, he learned the hard way that when you push someone too far, even the quiet ones eventually roar. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is realizing you never needed their approval in the first place. If you believe in justice and sweet revenge, hit subscribe and join the Velvet Kiss Revenge family.